Good evening, afternoon, night, and a happy new year and a happy new season of the Men in Red 97 podcast that is the Bonfire. I, as always, am Alan, the Pole with the goal, and I am joined by my lovely, jubbliest of co-hosts, Tim.
Hey, you never go to me first. Wow, this is a whole new world. New year, new orders, new universe.
DJ.
I'm offended now. My autism is set off.
Alex.
Hello.
And oh my days, he has returned from his battles and journeys. It is Matt.
Hi, Alan. Hi, everyone. Great to be here.
He has returned. The one who has started this all.
The one who
the
was
free
promised.
pass on bingo cannot be completed now.
Oh, that's true. The free space was always Matt is not here.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. Now it's now that bingo game is impossible. People have already lost.
Yeah, that sucks, guys. Sorry, now you're all losers. I'm the only winner. Ha ha. I'm kidding. I love you all.
Well, technically, you just said Matt is not here, so that actually did tick off the box.
This is BS. I hate everything.
So anyways, as mentioned, this is the start of season 3 of the Bonfire podcast ahead of the 2025 MLS season and the next season for the Fire. So I'm glad that you guys are able to spend time with us. You in the audience listening to this on your phone, in the car, keep your eyes on the road, hands on 3 and 9. So let's just get right into it, shall we? Well, Christmas or Hanukkah in some case for some people came early for us Fire fans because the team announced that Gaston Gimenez, the former captain and one of the first DPs signed by Georg Heitz all the way back in 2020, has left for Paraguayan side Cerro Porteño. Gaston was the most capped player after the departure of Fabian Herbers with 134 appearances, only scoring 4 goals in that time. And he has served as captain for much of the 2024 season, as well as 1 game in 2023. It's a mutual termination, meaning the Fire are retaining their 1 season buyout. You can read definitely more analysis as well as what we had to say on it on meninred97.com. But for us lads currently in the call, how surprising was this news to drop right before the holidays?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things about it that are worth mentioning. Just first, before we jump into the full discussion, is you mentioned that it doesn't use the buyout. That's for now. They could still retroactively make this the buyout. Essentially, there's a cap hit that they still have to take right now because it was a mutual termination and there was a settlement of payment between the 2 parties. However, if they don't use the buyout by the end of the transfer window or whenever they decide to, they can retroactively make this a buyout and there will be no cap hit for it. However, I think that's fairly unlikely for reasons we'll discuss later, and you can read in other articles on the site. But that is an important thing to know.
That's complicated. I can't lie. I don't really understand it.
The point being, though, that the Fire do retain the option to buy someone out if they would like to, right? I think that's the most important thing about this. I think that a lot of us thought that Gaston Gimenez, I mean, he had been linked to a departure, typically to a club in Argentina. A couple of different clubs have been mentioned. It was almost an annual thing, right? Like the Fire offseason happens and Gaston is rumored to move to South America. And so I think a lot of us saw this news. It looked like a more credible report, but it was sort of like a ha ha ha. Yeah, we've heard this one before. And then it moved very quickly from could this be real to being officially confirmed by the team.
It just went in a couple hours. Things moved really, really quickly from there's one rumor out there on social media to very quickly, oh, I'm hearing this is very legitimate. They're actually in very advanced negotiations. And then 2-3 hours later, it's official.
It was 7 hours. It was 7 hours when I found the tweet and sent it to Tim, and when they announced it, 7 hours.
Wow.
Daniel Maciel, by the way, a reporter in Paraguay who has a very large following there, was the one with the rumor. He got there first, and obviously his sourcing was fantastic on this.
Yeah.
This to me felt like a divorce, and like like for the last 2 years we've been separated, and finally those papers went through the judge and they signed off and everything's good. But it was a long time coming, like a 2-year process. Obviously opens up a lot of avenues for the club, which I think is the more important part of him actually leaving. And I'm excited to do what Triple G is going to do at that spot. And as long as they keep Souquet, I will be perfectly okay with the rest of the offseason. There's my take, folks.
Matt keeps on thinking he's on hot takes.
Someone's got to say something controversial.
I mean, yeah. Pretty sure a lot of people understand and think the same thing. So, I mean, continuing on the conversation on this topic, what could this really mean for the Fire's roster situation? As mentioned, this does free up a DP slot. So, like, how are the Fire going to use that now open DP slot? Is it going to be for a similar position or maybe somewhere else?
Yeah, so they have 2 DP slots. Almost certainly, they're going to be a winger and a center mid. Now, they might not both be done in January or by February. They might hold on to one of them until the summer if they don't get somebody they really like. But it's going to be a winger. It's going to be a center mid. That's almost a certainty.
Most likely the center mid is going to be more of an attacking piece than what Gaston was. I would be very surprised if it was, I mean, to this day, like 134 games in, I don't know, you guys can give your opinions. I still don't really know if Gaston Gimenez was more of a 6 or an 8 in his heart. He was a 7 is a different position. That's a winger, but like he was the average of the two in a way that I don't think really worked for the squad the entire time. I would suspect that the replacement piece is going to be someone who has more of an attacking upside than I think.
Yeah, Gaston Gimenez, I remember in 2021, so this was quite some time ago. I remember I was at a Fire game and I commented that he was a defensive midfielder who didn't really defend, but he didn't attack either. So I'm not quite sure what he did.
Yeah, he would pass the ball forward. He would get it forward, but he wouldn't get it forward into dangerous places. He didn't cover a lot of ground on defense. And realistically, at a DP spot especially, you need a guy. If a guy is going to be a DP in that kind of position, you need a guy that kills at both of those jobs. And he didn't kill.
Yeah, my expectation is the replacement's going to be a true box-to-box midfielder because we know Greg Berhalter is going to like to use Acosta as the destroyer.
I'll say there's one team in the league that I truly believe that we should emulate in terms of these 2 signings. And they recently won the MLS Cup, and that's the LA Galaxy. When they went and signed an elite winger, not even one elite winger, 2 elite wingers, but we really only need one for our purposes of this discussion, and Gabriel Peck and Josip Panstel. And then before that, they brought in obviously Ricky Puig. What? How do you say it? Puig. Thank you. I was wrong on all of them. I knew that they were going to start cooking. And, you know, this Puig, who's a center mid by nature, but obviously has those attacking tendencies, really high profile. And then you bring in those 2 talented wingers, it nets trophies. So I think it's spot on. Those are the 2 you need to bring in. And we know that Joe is not afraid to spend. I mean, he did it with the Shack, even though the Shack sucked. And I think there's no reason he can't go out. Like it said in an article, 30 million somewhere. I forgot where that was. It was an MLS guy. But you get a guy like Panstel and you get a guy like Puig. And you're rocking and rolling. The pieces around him, the pieces around them are already in place, and I think we'd be successful.
Yeah, that's a great. I mean, the other thing about that model is obviously the Galaxy were a team that had sort of been stuck in the mud for a decade for the most part. They had been spending, but even bringing in guys like Zlatan, who was fun to watch. I think in a way that like
Steven Gerrard too.
Yeah, I mean, like, and some of those guys, like, they had fun highlight moments in a way that I think Fire fans have really kind of missed out on with some of the recent signings. Like, we only got a couple, I think, from Shaqiri that looked anything like highlight reels.
The Miami game, and that's it.
Yeah, the Miami game.
There was like and the goal against Montreal, and that's it.
Yeah, that was sick.
Yeah,
that was
that goal against Montreal. Then the other time is just playing, playing Jedi mind games in Minnesota, and winning. But like, yeah, like it, as much fun as that was, like it didn't win hardware. And I don't think the Galaxy were even really that close to seeming like a genuine competitor. But then you bring in a couple huge difference makers of like, obviously like league beating caliber, and your team looks entirely different.
It's not one piece that can really change the game. And if it can be that piece that can definitely support the attack, which has been honestly just because especially when you have someone of a caliber of Hugo Kuipers, he needs that help. He needs that support moving forward. So I guess that's definitely something that the Fire could use in terms of that DP slot.
Now, just the one thing to clarify, it's likely the team will go with a 3DP, 3U22 model. They have the ability to get 4U22s, 2 DPs and GAM as they did last year. That's not likely where the team is going to end up in the long run, but which decision I think is the right one will depend on how quickly the Fire front office thinks they can land on signings, and basically if they think that the roster flexibility that getting the GAM this year provides for, say, next year, if they think they're not really going to compete to win this year but can next year, if they think they can get the team to the next level this year and then with that model and the GAM and that flexibility and then to the next level next season, I would suspect that it will land with 3 DPs still, but I wouldn't be entirely surprised if the math works out the other way.
And they don't have to decide which model they use until the summer transfer window closes. So we might not know until mid-August.
That's not... Yeah, I mean, that's obviously not necessarily true depending on exactly how their cap situation works out. They have to declare a model before the roster compliance date. They did last year because it was a mid-season change.
It can be flexible until August.
Right. And they can choose which way they get to the cap. But, you can sort of close the path out. Like if you sign 3 DPs between now and the close of the window sometime in late April, we don't have those dates yet, which is crazy. Like here we are, we're recording this at the very end of December and we don't know when the transfer window opens in the United States. It's nuts. But the fact that we the team, has until the window closes in April to sign players, bring them in. If you sign 3 senior DPs that can't become U22s, then that's the model you got to stick with unless one of them can get bought down.
Yeah. All right. So some other points of discussion, of course, everything that we've discussed on can be read upon more if you go on menandred97.com, where you have articles by both Alex, Tim, and other writers on what we just talked about, including players who could be leaving the Fire this January and everything like that. So one thing that we can definitely discuss right now, because it's sort of the midway point of the off season. So it's the midway point for Triple G's, for Greg Berhalter's first off season. Basically, a little more than 2 months since Greg was hired, little less than 2 months until the regular season starts. So how do we think? Yeah, no, it's crazy, honestly. So how do we think Berhalter has done so far, Matt?
I mean, undeniably, those that are casual fans of the club will probably think it's been very insignificant and dull. And in a way, they're not wrong, in my opinion. I think we look at what he's done so far, and that's give the 2 first-team contracts to both Amari and Pareba are cool. That's cool. That's fun. How much playing time they're actually going to see up in the air. But I think both of them have been given the right to compete for the first team. And to us who really understand the team and who know Fire 2, obviously we're excited about that. Like I said, if you're casual, maybe you're like, who are these guys? Don't really care as much. But I'm going to steal Alex's limelight because I know he's excited about this one. But the Borso signing is awesome. And I'm sure he'll have more to say about that. But once again, if you're a casual, you're probably like, great, we just signed an 18-year-old kid, local kid. Give me the $15 million signings. There's definitely work to do. That's undeniable. Oh, I forgot about Elliott too. That's obviously a great signing. But work to do with Gaston opening up. That work will start heating up real quick. And I'm optimistic. That being said, I've been optimistic the last 10 seasons rather. So we'll see what happens. But so far, it's been a fun start. Needs to pick up quickly.
It's good to stay optimistic. And going off of what you were saying, Matt, that for the more casual fan, it doesn't seem like there's a lot going on. But for those sickos like us that really dive deep into the Fire and the inner mechanisms that is this club, there's a lot. And there has been a lot going on, and there is a lot going on. I mean, he's done so many changes to the coaching staff, to even the front office staff. Basically, there's been just this whole shift from top to bottom with Greg, and it's exciting. It's essentially, once again, another sort of new start, a sort of maybe like a true rebuild since Joe Mansueto bought the club, since Georg Heitz did what he did for the last 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, it's honestly a bit exciting, at least on that front. Now, of course, yeah.
I mean, I think that you're making a good point, because this just goes to show how important it was. One, that, I know that there was discussion about whether or not Berhalter, it makes sense to have anyone, not Berhalter personally, in the role of both a sporting director, chief soccer officer kind of role, as well as the head coach. One thing that it did is it meant that the Fire, you always want to hire the front office guy before you hire the coach, right? Because you want them to have input. The Fire needed both, clearly. And what this did is it let the Fire get both out of the way early. Georg Heitz was hired basically the week before Christmas in December 2019. And that is kind of when off-season planning really started in earnest for the Fire. Obviously, he had ideas that he suggested as part of the interview process, but that's when the work started. Gaston Gimenez wasn't hired, I believe, or brought into the team until the end of February in 2020.
He didn't play the season opener, did he?
No, he didn't play the season opener.
I think he debuted in the last game before COVID.
Yes.
Look, 2020, they changed horse midway through the offseason. Veljko Paunovic was originally going to be the head coach in 2020. He actually made one signing in that offseason, Alvaro Medran, and then they fired him. So the Fire are in an infinitely better place than they were in 2020.
And the Medran signing happened, I think, before Heitz was brought in. So that just goes to show, and the thing is, that ended up creating a pattern for the Fire where they got business done late in the offseason. The Fire didn't announce their roster decisions until a month after the team had stopped playing last year. This year, it was pretty close to immediate. So the team is further along in planning. I think that filling out the front office was maybe not as fast as I thought it could be, but they still did a rapid job getting the front office filled out, bringing in guys like Greg Broughton, and then hiring around that since then. And it's a larger, I think, more capable front office than what the team has had in recent years as well.
Also, do not sleep on addition by subtraction, because the Fire have gotten rid of the players on the senior roster that, for the most part, they really don't need and don't want. They've gotten rid of Gaston Gimenez now. It really just leaves Arnaud Souquet as a terrible system fit and a bad contract. And you've got Chris Mueller, who they'd ideally like to move on from. But that's pretty much it. They're pretty happy with the guys they have now, and they have 6 slots to sign people, and maybe more if they can get rid of Souquet, Mueller, maybe Teron leaves, maybe others. So they're going to have a lot of flexibility to sign the players they want, who are going to be better system fits and on better salaries.
And I'll also say, I feel like this is the classic case of hitting the ground running, compared to Heitz when he got here in 2019, learning the whole system of what MLS looks like. Greg Berhalter, as we all know, or maybe we don't, coached in MLS. He's been in the U.S. soccer system for years. He knows what he's doing when it comes to DPs and GAM and TAM and all this MLS bloody crap going on. So that should provide a little bit comfort as to we don't have a GM or sporting director that has to learn how the system works. And so now we have a guy who has 2-3 months before the season starts, rather 4 months probably, knows the league. He's already brought in a guy in the league, which we didn't see a lot during the Heitz days. And I think there's definitely reason for optimism.
Yeah, going off of what you said, Matt, of hitting the ground running, some people here might be used to getting phone calls from the front office, from the ticket sales people. And I was actually talking with one who they're in charge of my season tickets and all that jazz. And they said that the first day that Greg Berhalter was here, that things immediately changed in the Fire office, in the office building in the front office space. And I think there's even a video of Greg himself on the phone with talking with people about getting tickets and everything like that. So definitely, I think just that mentality shift of hitting the ground running and that Greg brings, it's exciting for me.
Although I am going to put the brakes on a little bit. I agree. He's been making good moves. It seems like the tone around the team has changed, which is exactly what you wanted when you brought Greg in. One thing that, I know that there was controversy at the end of his tenure with U.S. men's national team, but he, throughout his time there, was known as a good sort of motivator of a lot of the people around him. And I think that that's the impact that he had on the Fire's front office. I think that putting the brakes on things a little bit, he talked about bringing in 5 or 6 starters. I'm not trying to speak against, the ceiling level of guys like Borso or Glasgow or Pareba, but like I don't think anyone really.
No, he's brought in one so far.
Yeah, one. And the team's cap situation, which we've discussed with some articles on Men in Red 97 that you can read about there.
Read them.
The team is in a relatively constricted cap situation because one of the things that didn't happen for the Fire in 2024 that typically did while Heights was in charge was selling a player. And that happened at the same time that the way that GAM is calculated changes. So that does hamstring the Fire's cap situation a little bit compared to, I think, where some of the other teams around the league are.
I will say as well with Berhalter, he's probably smart enough to know that this is not going to be done in one season. This is not one transfer window. Like we said earlier with the TP slot, he's probably going to save it till summer if he uses it. But and the way he signed Elliott to a 1-year contract with an option says he knows this is going to be a few years before the Olympics was.
Yeah, I mean, normally the rule of thumb, talking to people that have covered the league for years, 3 transfer windows is a reasonable amount of time to expect someone to be able to turn a roster around. It seems like LA happened overnight. They did kind of get a jump on things. Their chief soccer officer, basically, I forget his exact title, but was with the club for in a role for about a year before getting that title. So like there was a smoother transition there and they were kind of further along, bringing guys like Ricky Pooch in,
Well, Ricky Pooch was signed in August 2022.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's right around when he was, I think that's right around the time that he, and I'm blanking on his name, I can see his face, but I think he's the youngest chief soccer officer in MLS. Anybody gonna help me out here? No.
Hang on, Tim. Tom Braun.
Will Kuntz, right?
Will Kuntz.
Will Kuntz was the chief soccer, but he was in a role there for a year, I think, and I think that he got there right before Pooch was brought in. And so they had a jump, so it didn't quite come out of nowhere the way that it looks like it may. But 3 windows is a good rule of thumb. And we haven't seen one yet. Like this January window's 1, the summer's 2, and then another sort of like off season next year is 3.
So
you're not going to sign a player from overseas until January, most likely. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Well, some teams have announced deals. Seems like, Gaston Gimenez is not formally a member of Cerro Porteño yet because their window hasn't opened, but you can announce deals whenever. It just isn't likely to happen. The other thing is a lot of the top players you probably want to sign, MLS may not necessarily, not the Fire just alone, but like anywhere in MLS may not be on their radar and it may not be their preferred destination. And so I think that what you want to do is a lot of the time you wait and guys think, oh, I'm going to get moved to this club in the Bundesliga or the Premier League or La Liga or wherever. And when it becomes clear that that move is not going to happen, that's when MLS clubs are able to say, look, here's the deal. Here's what we can give you. Here's what we can pay you. Here's the atmosphere of the club here. And that's why you see a lot of deals happening a little bit later. Because, for top quality talent like Ricky Pooch, like MLS, I guarantee you he was not spending, 2020 thinking, I'm going to kill it with the LA Galaxy someday, right? Like he was thinking about making the first squad at Barca.
So are you saying, Tim, that DP focus is going to happen in January because that's when the European window's open?
Well, the window's overline, right? And the thing is, I think for the most part, you have a better selection of players available in the summer. That's one of the reasons MLS has talked about moving schedules so that the summer windows becomes the primary window in MLS because there's more players that are available then. An issue that the Fire and other teams have had is that the MLS summer window closes while the window is still open in Europe. And so the summer window is when most players are available around the world. And it closes in MLS while it's still open in Europe. And so guys that are holding off for a move to a club somewhere in Europe can still be holding off even to the point of the window closing.
Helpful. That's very helpful. Love that. We love rules. God, I hate rules.
Especially MLS roster rules.
Yeah, this is like the transfer window too, which is like different in everything. And I don't know. We can have a discussion about the transfer window at some point. The transfer window didn't used to exist. I feel like in 20 years it won't exist. It just is getting to that point because it was supposed to make it easier on players because they could only move at certain times. But in the end, I think it just created headaches and irresponsible spending by a lot of clubs. So,
yeah. So I guess to just sort of round out this part of the discussion, just how is everyone basically just feeling about the current state of the Fire ahead of the 2025 season, essentially?
Optimistic.
I mean, there were four phases of this. Okay, get rid of the bad players from the bottom of the roster and sign better players to replace them. Get rid of the bad contracts from the top half of the roster. Get better players to replace them. Well, they've done both of those, but the bottom half of the roster, they've upgraded the supplemental roster marginally, significantly. However, we'll see how it goes. Top half of the roster, they've gotten rid of most of the players they need to get rid of. Now they just need to go out and sign them. And that's what you're going to see in January and February, and then eventually in the summer. So I think they're right on track right now. You got your top free agency target. You got rid of the top player you need to get rid of in Gaston Gimenez. Focus now, getting rid of those extra players you need to get rid of or want to get rid of to give you more space, and then go out and sign those top quality starters to improve your starting 11.
So like one question, gut feeling, Alex, do you think the Fire are going to be bringing in one top level starter, like one DP, say before the season starts? I know the window's open till April. Or do you think it's going to be two?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think 100% they'll sign one.
Yeah.
And it'll be from Europe. I don't know who the second one would be yet. But no, I actually think the winger is going to be signed first. Like, I think you're going to see a high quality winger signed, and I think that they might start the season a bit weaker in midfield and then sign a midfielder in the summer unless they land their targets in January.
Yeah, and I think the chance of landing both targets in January, that's my gut feeling too. I don't think it's incredibly likely.
But I think the winger they're going to get first.
Yeah, I agree. There's also, frankly, just more wingers, I think, that will kill it in MLS out there than there are top-level midfielders, like Ricky Pooch style midfielders, since we've mentioned his name a lot. This is officially a Ricky Pooch fan podcast now.
Yes.
But like, yeah, I think there's just more of those people available worldwide that would kill it in MLS than there are people of like Pooch's profile.
But my expectation for the next starter that will get signed, I'm not going to say a name, but I think the next starter that's going to get done and announced is going to be the starting right back next season.
That's
Mauricio Pineda.
Jonathan Dean they've already announced that Dean is back. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm going to keep my lips closed on that one, but I'll say I really enjoy the recent invasion of the Belgian league in MLS. I know Cincy just signed their guy up top from the Belgian league, obviously Hugo and Pan still, and I feel like there's so much quality in that league that we could keep looking at. But I'm also going to say something that I think our colleague and good dear friend Jiggly is going to be really happy about, that I think we should start stepping into the Asian market. There's a lot of good talent there, and I know some MLS teams are dipping their feet in. A lot of European teams are dipping their feet in. But something we could eye down, and I'm wondering if anyone's on board with that with me.
The Fire still have never signed a player from Asia. They've signed a player from Oceania.
Well, the Fire have had one international player who's plays for an Asian national team.
Alex Monis.
The Philippines national team.
But he was not with the Philippines when he signed with the Fire.
He American. He did not come from an Asian club. The Fire. Now, I don't know, and Alex, you may know this. I actually haven't thought to ask, but one thing the Fire did after Joe Mansueto bought out the team was really bulk up the scouting department, and is now one of the largest scouting departments in MLS. And one of the things that Mansueto identified with buying Lugano was that they would further extend their scouting network. They have a dedicated scout for Asia, and I believe that they're one of only 2 or 3 clubs that do. Obviously, Berhalter's now in charge of how many scouts there are, where they are, all that kind of stuff. But I believe that scout is still in place. Alex, I don't know if you know this, or Matt.
I'm not sure about the Asia one. I know the African one has been very successful. Well, I don't know what's going to happen with the scouting department if things are going to change, because that was Peltzer's department. He controlled that. He ran it. He built it up. He organized everything. Now that he's in Lugano, I don't know how things are going to change with Berhalter in charge. So we've got Mikey Stevens in recruiting, Greg Broughton as the technical director. But yeah, I'm not quite sure how that's going to change going forward, because that was Peltzer's area. But I'd imagine they're still in place, even though they haven't signed anyone from that region yet.
And just
Actually,
before,
go ahead,
just really quickly on that, yeah, like also having an Africa scout is also very rare in MLS. So like I know it sounds crazy, like you have one scout to cover a continent that has over 1 billion, or in the case of Asia, billions of people, but their job.
Well, they found a random guy at a mid-table club in Benin, and he was actually pretty decent for Fire too before he tore his ACL. So
yeah, no, 100%. And like that's the thing. Like you're in the market, you're traveling around from country to country, watching guys. You've got better access to games when you're in that region, and it's very rare for teams, even like a Premier League club, is not going to have 5 different scouts covering Africa, for example.
I also just want to say, pivoting back to Asia, because I thought of something absolutely brilliant. DJ, you're actually technically wrong. We have technically signed one Asian player, although it's like kind of an Asian country, but it's in Asia. Can anyone think about who I'm thinking of?
Technically, there's 2 countries.
Wait, an Australian player?
No, not Australian, man.
No, he's talking about Israel,
yeah.
but
or Baruch, 2011.
But for soccer purposes, Israel is in Europe.
Yeah.
Oh shoot, you're right. God dang it!
That's why I said
him.
no AFC country has ever had a Fire player while they were with the AFC nation. Alex Moniz is the only technical.
Now, that's the weird thing. That's why I thought I couldn't think of an Australian player, but I'm like, because Australia is now in Asia for soccer purposes, which is ridiculous.
Well, Israel did play in the Asian Confederation. They also played in the Oceanian Confederation for a bit.
Yeah, so, when Asia kicked them out because there were too many countries that just refused to play against Israel or in Israel, which I don't know. Like, I still don't know. Like, if I'm the Israeli Football Association, I would be like, all right, fine. We'll take those like 3-0 decisions by forfeit, like every match. Like, win championships by nobody playing you. Like, great.
I'm actually really bummed I got that one wrong. My hand was, for the viewers out there, my hand was up for 5 minutes waiting to drop that fact on all of you, and I happen to be wrong. So I'm just going to go mute for the next 10 minutes. Goodbye.
Matt forgot that he was dealing with the DJ autism.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The funny thing is, we were talking, guys, offline, at least a couple of us, about, someone that was linked in a report out of Israel with the Fire, who's technically, he's on loan right now, but he's signed with Maccabi Tel Aviv. And I mean, come on, like they were in the Champions League qualifying this year, the UEFA Champions League qualifying. Come on, Matt, you knew that Israel is in UEFA for, soccer purposes.
Yeah, I was thinking about it just from a country perspective, and I failed to think about the fact that they were in UEFA Nations League qualifying. That was I thought of it. I got excited. I didn't actually think it through. But this goes back actually to something that Alan asked initially that I wanted to comment on. Alex brought up this great answer about why, like the 4-step process to, like how he's feeling going into the 2025 season. And I don't actually think like that. Like I don't think about Israel being in UEFA. I just think about it as an Asian country. My one word to describe it was cheerio, like happy. And I just thought of that because my brain doesn't work like Alex's or Tim's, DP's, Gam. I don't know that stuff. I just think and I say. And I think
Matt is a vibe.
No. I just work here. But yeah, no. I messed up. I'm sorry, guys.
We will never let you live this down. Don't worry.
Yeah, no problem, Matt. So one more thing, since it is the new year, new season and all that, we wanted to talk some Fire New Year resolutions that we each have here at Men in Red 97 Podcast. So, of course, other than, getting to the playoffs or Open Cup victory or stuff like that, because I think that's just the resolution for any Fire fan or for the Fire themselves, just sort of outside of that. I can start us off and then we can go around sort of the resolution that I had for the Fire. And for me, one was to truly, I think Frank Klopas said this a few times. I can't remember if other managers have said this, but make Soldier Field a fortress and try to really keep the home losses to a minimum, or the best, at best, none, because we mentioned how difficult it is to get points away, especially in MLS on the road. So getting the maximum amount of points or as much points as possible at home in front of our fans would be a great place to start, because how many times has it happened that we could have been in a better situation with a home victory, and then all of a sudden they trip over themselves and they end up losing those points. So make Soldier Field, for as long as we're still here, a fortress. And then once we get the new stadium, we'll make that the fortress. But for 2025, make Soldier Field a fortress.
It's a good one. I have 3. Is that okay, Alan?
Go for it.
I just love resolutions. They make me happy. Number 1, Andrew Gutman leads MLS in assists. I truly believe it. He's done it in the past, and he could do it again. Maybe not the most in the league, but he's an assist. He's like a Jedi Robinson type player. That's how I see him in my eyes. Number 2, I think it would be absolutely incredible to see a Chicago Fire player win one of those MLS awards at the end. Obviously, Nemanja Nikolic did it in 2017, Golden Boot. But I'd love to see one of our players win, MVP. What's the assist one called? Golden Foot? Did I just make that?
There's no
okay, there is not one, but we'll make one up anyways because it's fun. Golden Boot, one of those things. It'd be great. Or if we can't get that, how about we just get someone in the MLS Best 11? Something that we could really take from this season, even if we don't make the playoffs, which we should, to expand on going into 2026. And the third one, I do not remember what it was, but if I do remember, I'll wave my hand frantically and get back to me.
All right. Go for it, Alex.
Okay. So I have 2. One is tangible, one is less quantifiable. So number 1 is the less tangible one. I think that the Fire just need to have a unique, identifiable playing style within MLS. The Fire have not had that the last couple of years. What is the Fire's identity? I don't know. Under Frank Klipas, what was it? They just kind of threw players out there.
The
players
friendship
didn't know their roles on the field. Brian Gutierrez, the entirety of last season, was running around. He didn't even know what position he was playing half the time. He was just kind of in a floating number 10 role-ish, kind of. Like, the Fire need to have an identity. Greg Berhalter gave the U.S. men's national team an identity. I think you're going to see that with the Fire. He just needs to be able to implement that. But in terms of one specific thing that you can hang your hat on this year, I want one Fire player be called up to the U.S. men's national team in the 2025 Gold Cup. I don't know if that's going to be a player currently on the Chicago Fire's roster, like a Chris Brady or a Brian Gutierrez, or if it's going to be someone the Fire sign this January or in the summer that is a part of that Gold Cup team. I want to see one Chicago Fire player representing the U.S. in the Gold Cup for Mauricio Pochettino. It's not an easy objective, but I think it would be a very good mark of progress, and I think it would be a good connection with Greg Berhalter now being the head coach. He's got that relationship with Pochettino as well, and it's been a long time since the Fire had a player really in the national team. I mean, Georgi Mihailovic was a backup in 2019 for like 3 camps. That's pretty much the last time the Fire had a player in the national team. Prior to that, you have to go back to Dax McCarty in 2017. So
yeah, although I will shout out Maury Pineda, who was called into.
He was called up to one January camp friendly, but didn't play. Right. So for me, it's
U23s.
Yes. Well, there have been a few in the youth teams, but for me, I think you want to have one player on that Gold Cup roster. I doubt it's going to be Kellen Acosta. I think his time is up with Aiden Morris and Tanner Tessman coming into the picture. But in that Gold Cup team, maybe Chris Brady's the most likely right now.
Give us a name. Come on, Alex.
Chris Brady, third goalie, is my best guess. I mean, that's a bit of a disappointing answer because he won't play and you won't get to see him on the field. But that's my best guess right now. But you never know. I think there's a good chance the Fire might sign someone who sneaks onto that roster. So we'll see what happens. I mean, Kellen Acosta, he's told me every time I've spoken to him, he wants to get back into the national team. I think that's unlikely, but you never know if he really hits the ground running and maybe there are some injuries in that midfield. Maybe he can get in over a Tanner Tessman who's been out of form the last couple of months.
Do you want to talk about this just for a second, guys? Because I think that's an interesting question because I think that, Acosta, when we talked to him about a year ago now, 10 months ago now, seemed to think that his role was more of an 8, sort of like more advanced midfielder with the Fire. I think that if he became a lockdown defensive center mid, which right now in the roster is not the role that I'd necessarily expect him to play, because I think that just given who's signed right now, I think that's going to be Fede's job. But I think that if he took that job on and really embraced it, I think that would be his ticket to get back to the national team, because that's not really a position
that's not what Aiden Morris is, right? I mean, right. I'm a big Aiden Morris fan. He's the backup 6 right now to Tyler Adams. He's not that Kellen Acosta type player like the Kellen Acosta we saw at his best in World Cup qualifying. Very different type of player. So if Kellen is very serious about breaking back into the national team picture, because actually when he first signed for the Fire, he said one of the reasons he picked the Fire is because he thought he could play a role with the Fire that would enable him to make a push to get back into the national team before the World Cup in 2026.
And I think that's the role, is committing to that more defensive role, especially because like
there is no other player like that.
Yeah, and Tyler Adams, as skilled as he is, I mean, like, he just has been injury prone, and I hope that he never gets an injury again for the rest of his life. Like, but in terms of what's realistic, I don't think that's a realistic expectation for Adams, just based on the injury history. So I think that is a realistic way to get call-ups, because even if Adams is available, you do wonder, like, you want someone who is going to be a steady hand afterwards, right? Like, because you don't want the backup to necessarily be an unproven young player. You want the backup to be someone that you can rely on to be thrown into game situations, you know, maybe at the last minute if somebody gets hurt in warmups. And I think that's a role that Acosta could do really well in.
I mean, that's what he did in World Cup qualifying. If he can get back to that form he had under Berhalter, because look, Kellen Acosta's had a good career in MLS. He's had a very good career so far. He's had a decent national team career. The pinnacle of his career, the best soccer he played, was that stretch between June 2021 and March 2022 under Greg Berhalter, from the Nations League through World Cup qualifying. That was the best version of Kellen Acosta we've ever seen, and the best games he played in that span were as the number 6.
Agreed.
This also begs the question, slightly tangent, of Federico Navarro and his role on the Fire, if there is a role on the Fire going forward. Do we think he's gone this market, or because we're already thinning out on midfield, is he going to stay in the mix?
He's staying, I think.
I think if there's an offer for him, they'd be inclined to listen, but he does fit the system.
Well,
so
Berhalter has mentioned Navarro as being one of the guys that he looks at. That's kind of one of the weird things. Berhalter has mentioned Navarro as being a guy he looks at really well, Turan as someone he looks at really well, and Mueller and Marin as 2 guys that he also is very interested in. Although Mueller is much more as a leadership
Mueller, they're
position.
going to try to move if possible, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously Mueller just on his wages that's a hard ask, right? Like, it's the same thing as Gaston, where it's not that Gaston couldn't fit on some teams' rosters, because obviously, you know, he just signed with a new club that's excited to have him, but it just isn't the most likely possibility, just given the money that he's been promised.
Mueller, I think, is the guy that you're looking at as the take the hit now, wait till 2025 guy.
That's possible. I mean, if we're being realistic, to be generous to him, a lot of players with the kinds of injury that he had that took him out for basically a whole year, they look better the second year back than they did the first. So he could be in line for better performance than what we saw from him last year. The other thing is, I think that realistically, both between the injury and his just aging, he needs to adapt his game a little bit, because he doesn't have that explosive burst of speed that he can rely on to beat the last defender 1v1. And he didn't do that last year. It takes time to figure out that you can't do that, and really not in your head, but like in your heart, because things move so quickly in the game, come up with an alternate strategy, knowing that you're not going to be able to beat that guy with a burst of speed.
Look, based on his 2024 performance, he's in that same conversation with Souquet and Gaston relative to his contract. However, unlike those 2 guys, I think he has a very high upside. We saw how good he was in 2022. We know how good he was in 2020 and 2021 with Orlando. So, seriously, right now, yes, they'd ideally like to move him, because in some ways he is damaged goods in a sense because of his injuries. But at the same time, he has that upside. Even if he's an expensive backup, I think unlike the other guys, there is a role he can play with this team, and he's a fit for the system.
The other thing is if Matt's dream comes true and Andrew Gutman does lead the league in assists, I mean, some of those goals are probably going to be passing the ball to someone up the left wing, and if it's Mueller, then he would be in line to be finishing some of those goals.
And I will say my favorite role that Federico Navarro plays for the club is he's the most reliable yellow card getter on the team. You send that guy on in the 75th minute to wreak some havoc, he'll get you that yellow card. Just you sports bettors out there, just putting that out there.
I'm not going to name names, but a joke that has been made in the press box between me and someone else is taking bets on how many minutes it'll be from the time that Navarro subs on to the time that he gets the yellow. And especially with Fabi and Herbers out, who Fabi would just get some of the stupidest yellows you've seen in your life. With him off the roster, like that role is 100% Fede's.
Which is ironic because last year the Fire didn't have a red card.
Fede may not have lived up to his promise, but he still has, I think, a lot of talent at his disposal. We haven't seen it, but I also think we, like, much like Guti, like we never really since, 2021, like basically when he came into the roster, it seems like he hasn't really had a set job description that he can grow into and thrive. And it's a recipe for not doing well. This is the last year that he can stay on a U22 contract with the Fire, unless I'm mistaken about his age. So, because he's on that deal for this year, that means that he hits the roster at, he takes up that U22 slot, but he hits the roster at a $200K cap hit. So that's very cap friendly. And you're not going to get a guy, I think, with his skill level at anything close to that cap hit unless you replace him with another U22 when you're just rolling the dice on someone you don't know.
Swinging.
Team Fetty, rise up.
All right. Who else has got their resolution for the Fire next year?
Tim, you want to go next?
Sure. I was actually going to throw it to you, but so Alex and I are going to actually have a post up on New Year's resolutions for the Fire. So I'm going to steal one from that, and then I'll try coming up with another one on the fly. One is basically move quickly, but don't be hasty. That is something that I think early in 2020 or like late 2019, but mostly early 2020, that's something that Heights and Pelzer fell into. They rushed to sign basically every available slot on the roster, and it ended up hamstringing the team for years. Gaston Gimenez was signed to 3 different contracts in his time with the Fire, 2 of which kept him as a DP, even though I think that he never really produced at anything close to that level and didn't look like the kind of player you should be bringing in as a DP. Now, obviously, Berhalter and his staff have a lot more experience in MLS than Heights and Pelzer did, and so they're like less likely to fall into that pitfall. But I think they need to be willing to wait for the right signing in a lot of places, someone they'll be happy with for the long run, rather than worrying about the start of the season or the close of the transfer window or whatever. Like, it's going to be hard because you obviously are under pressure to compete and to get wins, but I think that you need to wait for the right kind of signing rather than just trying to get guys in as quickly as possible. The other thing I honestly really want to see is this is maybe one of the ones that you said we couldn't do, Alan, so tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I want the Fire to win a trophy in 2025. Obviously, the first trophy comes.
Brimstone Cup count.
The Brimstone Cup 100% counts as a trophy.
You're not allowed to say that. Sorry. Take it back.
Man, now I've just got to come up with another one. So you're just wanting me to do 3, just like you, Matt. That's not fair. So then I guess if I had to do one more, honestly, I think that just the Fire being more fun to watch. I know that's like a very, hard to define thing, but one of the issues with the Fire, like Alex talked about this sort of like lack of defined style the team has played in recent seasons and stuff like that. And it just never really felt like you knew what you were going to get. I think obviously goals are the most fun thing to watch in soccer, but even knowing that your team is going to make it incredibly painful for the other side to try to advance forward, like defensively elite teams can be fun to watch, but there just has to be something so that when people are going to a game, they have a reasonable expectation of what they're going to see week in, week out, regardless of the results. And I think that's something that Berhalter can provide for the team.
Swinging. I like that. I think combining all of our resolutions would truly make the Fire.
Although DJ still hasn't done his yet.
Oh, that's true, DJ. I'm so sorry.
We don't need to combine his. We know that already. It's okay. Right,
well, what do you think mine is?
I don't know. Something scary though, evidently.
It's going to be something that's like weird connection to like the Fire's like ancient history. Like they should sign someone. They should sign someone who won the double in 1998 as a player or something like that.
Bring Mike McGee back as the Fire's official alcohol taster.
Down.
Move the team to Rome and have them play in the Coliseum.
Also down.
No, actually, my resolution is I want the Fire to be the best men's team in Chicago. Which
that's
kind
of hard to do.
To be fair, we're White Sox fans.
Oh, yeah, it's true. We are White Sox.
I was going to say, like, they're going to end up with fewer losses than the White Sox. I guarantee you that, and more wins than the Bears. So there's.
As long as the Fire are better than the Cubbies, that's all I care about.
Can the Fire get more wins than the White Sox? Can the Fire get more points than the White Sox have wins in the season? That's a good
Depends.
question.
Are we invading Wrigley Field?
No, you're not.
That is still like that is. I mean, honestly, like assuming the White Sox are not as terrible as they were last year, that's still going to be a really rough, a very high bar to.
Yeah, considering they changed the name of the stadium from Guaranteed Rate Field to just Rate Field, they can't even guarantee. They can't even guarantee wins now. So, I still call it Comiskey, of course. But I honestly,
it's always Comiskey.
I do like what DJ. I do like what DJ proposed, considering that everyone can agree the state of Chicago sports is downright horrendous right now. It's either horrendous or just straight up mediocre. And if the Fire can manage to be the team to make even the playoffs, have it, or winning record, make the playoffs, and make some sort of push, the Fire can at least be a blip on the radar of Chicago sports, because oftentimes, even in 2024-25, the Fire are still forgotten when it comes to the discussion of Chicago sports and men's sports.
I think that changes, though. I think you're right about that. Like, this town loves a winner. Like, we saw, like, the Blackhawks basically, when good old Dollar Bill Wirtz passed away, within a year, the team had transformed from having the lowest attendance in the NHL to the highest attendance. And it went from being an afterthought in terms of like, if you're watching the like nightly news or whatever, they were like 5 seconds maybe of Blackhawks highlights to being a featured segment. A lot went into that, including getting the team on TV, which is obviously not happening for the Fire with the MLS deal. But the other side of it was they got good. They won trophies, I mean, basically immediately, which, again, like the Fire might be in line to do, but I think even just making noise and being good for more than 1 year, because 2017 was kind of a flash in the pan, I think that gets people excited about the team.
It's a good point. I mean, Chicago is not Montreal. It's not Toronto. This is not a hockey town, but when the Blackhawks were good, which is actually around the time I moved here, it was everywhere. The Blackhawks were everywhere. Everyone spoke about the Blackhawks. Everyone knew the Blackhawks players. Walk around today, it's not the case. Really not the case. You don't see it. Almost anywhere. You see Bedard's face every once in a while. But unless you're a hockey fan, it's not a point of conversation. It's not something that comes up. It's not a thing to do. So the Fire can become that if they start winning games.
I was watching the Bear game a couple days ago. What is today? Sunday. So Thursday, whenever it was.
Yeah. And it was fantastic. I love it when they get the loss out of the way so we don't have to waste time on the weekend for that.
Yeah, yep. It's true. But I was watching it with a couple of my buddies who are not soccer fans, and kind of made fun of me when I became a season ticket holder for the Fire, actually. They looked me in the eyes and they said, Matt, are the Fire going to be good in a year, good at all this year? And I said, I don't know, but maybe they could be the best team in this city. And the boys very strictly said, man, that'd be awesome for the city. If the Fire are good, I'll go to games with you all the time. So these people are looking for something out of nothing. And I think the bones and the structures in place for the Fire to be the team, maybe the Cubs are going to be good next year. Who knows that with that organization? Sorry, Alex. But I think we're close. And I do think it will really affect attendance and really affect the morale of the city overall, because we haven't had a winner in years.
True. I mean, so I was also watching the Bears game, and when they had the touchdown for just even that 1 second before it got called back for the holding, the crowd was mad. Like, the crowd was celebrating it as if it was a playoff win or something. So like the city is yearning for a winner. Essentially, they need something, because, as I said, the state of Chicago sports is truly desperate. Truly desperate. Any other resolution talks that we have?
I want the Fire to also sign a World Cup winner.
Fire are going to win the World Cup in 2025, boys.
Gamers, rise up.
I would love that.
So, as we said, in our plan, we'll be back during the off season every few weeks, and then, of course, once the season starts, we'll be basically on the regular. Of course, as I mentioned also previously, there's a ton of articles that you can read on all the topics that we talked about. The Gaston news and analysis. Alex has an article on 4 players that could be the next to leave the roster in January. Tim has a deep dive into our upcoming schedule. There's also the depth chart. And of course, there's even more New Year's resolutions for the Fire. So a lot of Men in Red 97 stuff to look out for the new year, for the new season. Just so much. There's so much to be excited for, not just for the Fire, but also for Men in Red 97. As we all nod our heads in agreement. So any last words of wisdom for our men, our women, and our they thems of the Fire?
I mean, I need to say rest in peace, President Carter, as of 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, from when we're recording, it's very sad.
Wait, actually?
Yeah. I posted in the chat. Yeah, he died, and we just found out while we were recording this.
Hold on. Oh, it just happened. Yeah. Wow. Oh, wow.
So everyone
Alan
figured exactly when we recorded this.
This is the actual live Alan reaction.
Live Alan reaction. Clip it, make it a sound, please.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You sounded surprisingly upbeat about this, Alan.
What? No, I wasn't alive when Carter was president, so I have no clue. So anyways,
he built houses for people that needed them, Alan.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
so,
you know what? DJ should be our host from now on. I'm over this Alan guy. He hates Jimmy Carter.
All right, DJ, close us off then.
Do I make the political joke or not?
All right, back to Alan.
All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Follow our socials, of course, MIR97 on Twitter, MIR97pods as well. You can also find us at Men in Red 97 on Instagram, and of course, meninred97.com to read all of the articles. Leave some likes, leave some reviews, leave some comments. Don't be strangers. Reach out to us, get in touch. Until then, Happy New Year. And as always, come on, you Men in Red.
Come on, you Men in Red.
Go Fire.
Come on, Men in Red.